You're a woman who's got to the top of British politics, looked at it, gone, it's utterly rotten.
Yeah, yeah, I have, yeah. And it has to change. If it doesn't change, the Conservative Party has no chance of survival, because I cannot believe in a million years that people who behave in this way, who are more interested in a hedonistic lifestyle, in having group gay sex sessions in offices. If you look at any stage during the day at BBC Parliament, you will see empty green benches in debates, but you won't see empty bars. And you won't see empty offices, two particular offices where those group gay sex sessions took place.
Do you think Boris Johnson ever had sex in a work environment? Hello and welcome to this special edition of the Political Fourcast. I'm joined today by Nadine Dorries, former Cabinet Minister, and I'm a celebrity contestant, also an author, once of fiction, but now of something a lot stranger. In her latest book, she reveals a shocking, some say improbable account of life inside Westminster, a world of secretive cabals, political dark arts, and sordid WhatsApp groups. Now, she's also been in the news this week because of a column she wrote, largely in response to the Channel 4 News revelations around the Church of England, in which she talked about her own experience of abuse and her dealings with the Church of England as a result of that. And we'll be delving into some of that experience too. Welcome. Now, you say in this latest book, if Kemi Badenoch is elected as leader of the Conservative Party, you will have to decide whether you're still a Conservative and whether it's a party worth fighting for. Yeah. So are you still a Conservative?
Look, it's, I remember in 2017 being very vocal about the fact that I could not understand how Labour MPs could campaign for Jeremy Corbyn and how they could stand for the Labour Party. And so and for the first time, really, I understand how they did, because actually I think what happens is your principles and your party actually come before
your
leader.
As well.
Yeah, it actually plays a big part. So I face this question, and I realise I'm a conservative. Conservative principles run through my veins.
But I mean, what you have described here is a very, very dark place.
Yeah.
It's a party that's, well, I mean, it's not really a political party. In your world, the Conservative Party is controlled by a very small number of unelected people, financed by mysterious sources, in which political leaders are not really in charge of anything, and elections don't really mean anything. I mean, how is that?
Well, there's something that's a very interesting point, actually. So can I just make 2 points in response to that? The first is that when I wrote the first book, The Plot, that people were saying this Dougie Smyth that she's written about, it's a figment of her imagination. There were MPs going out on camera on College Green saying he doesn't exist, I've never heard of him. And yet this Sunday just gone, you had Tim Shipman from the Sunday Times writing about Dougie Smyth as a mainstream figure in the Conservative Party.
Well, Dougie Smyth has long been known as a Conservative Party employee.
He
never had a public
No, Chris,
profile,
you know very well that a year ago when The Plot came out, it was the mentioning of Dougie Smyth that I was ridiculed for outing him. I'm glad to say he's now fully out and he's written about in mainstream media,
but what people
which is what
ridicule
needed to be.
is the way you portray him as the mastermind, the Svengali, the sort of, the man who really controls everything. So
why would you think
why
should
do you
be
think
ridiculed?
That? No, I don't. But I'm saying your view is ridiculed by some Conservatives. Now,
I don't think it is anymore. I don't think it is anymore.
Explain, how you think. Well, describe the world first of all, because to anyone who hasn't read the books or the columns.
What, the Conservative world?
Yeah, just describe, what you would say is this world and how it's controlled. Because people think of it as a political
that's
party.
Controlled. It's very simple. There are a group of men, Dominic Cummings, you know well of, Dominic Cummings, Dougie Smyth, Michael Gove, who from a very early stage have been key players in how the Conservative Party operates. Now, the members' vote doesn't really count for anything because they voted for leaders successively. And if it isn't the right leader, that leader is removed. And one of the most interesting interviews I think happened was an interview between Laura Kuenssberg and Dominic Cummings, in which he said in the interview very clearly, well, we knew we wanted Boris Johnson as Prime Minister, but we didn't want him to stay. We had to get him out. And he gave that, and she said to him, what? But he'd just been elected as Prime Minister. You mean within months? And he said, no, not within months, within days. These people have worked, they've been there since
But
for
where
23
does their power
years.
come from?
Well, that's a question. You will know I ask everybody. And I should just say these books, are interviews with other people. So most of the words, 96% of the words are not mine. They're the words of everybody from very senior
But from
cabinet
the people
ministers
you've spoken to, where does the power derive from?
Well, there are two.
For this small group of people who you say control
And
the
there are
party?
two constant questions that I ask and have never received an effective answer for, and that is how and why. How and why have they been allowed to create so much chaos over such a long period of time? No one has the power. One cabinet minister.
That's why so many people don't believe it, though, isn't
Yeah,
it? Because it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I don't think you're right in saying that anymore, Chris, because I've lived with the first book for a year, and I know now that, it was the most borrowed book in the House of Commons from the library. I know now that, MPs do believe it. They do understand it, because most of the things, a lot of the scenarios explained in the book now make sense to a lot of people. And, so Dougie Smyth he engineered quite vocally the removal of Boris Johnson. He was behind the scenes until then, removed Boris Johnson, put in place Rishi Sunak, who is known long before Rishi Sunak became an MP. He's credited in the book by a number of people, with having got Michael Gove his seat as well. He engineered for the removal of Rishi Sunak when Rishi Sunak didn't do what he wanted to do and they could see power slipping away, and then engineered for the installation of Kemi Badenoch. He's still there.
Why do none of these
He's still there.
get
So
rid of
just
him?
let me finish. He's still there in central office, being paid a very handsome salary, running the leader of the opposition's office.
Why? I mean, why does nobody get rid of him?
So a number of party treasurers have over the years tried to get rid of him. And what happens is party treasurers come into CCHQ and they go through the books, successive new ones, and they go, who is this bloke? And he says, get rid of him. Why is he here? And then they receive a phone call from Michael Gove, a hairdryer treatment phone call. This has happened over successive years, telling them that he will not go and he will stay
But why
and he
listen
will
to
remain
Michael
there.
Gove? I mean, who's Michael Gove?
Michael Gove, well, he was very close to Dave. This is during David Cameron's years. And as you know, they were very close. They holidayed together. He was very much part of the team Cameron until he stabbed Cameron in the back. He was very much a part. And this is something successive that they do.
Yeah, but I mean, he's still there now. So why would...
Who's there?
Why was Liz Truss not able to get rid of him?
She tried to get rid of him.
Yeah, but ultimately she didn't.
Yeah, no, she did.
So
Well,
how
because she
come?
didn't last long enough, Chris. She was only there 49 days, and she was told by the lawyers that she would have to go through, because he'd been there so many years, a legal process to remove him. His pass was removed to number 10, but he was still there on the payroll. And the first thing Rishi Sunak did when he became Prime Minister was reinstate Dougie Smith's pass. Let me tell you a story. The day Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, an aide was standing next to Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson sent a message to Rishi Sunak asking Rishi Sunak to be kind to those MPs who'd worked hard and were loyal to the party. And within seconds, a reply came back onto the aide's phone from Dougie Smyth. Now, I'm not going to say what that reply said, but Boris Johnson sent to Rishi Sunak, Dougie Smyth sent back to the aide in less than a minute.
Couldn't that have been a coincidence?
No, it was in response to that text message. It was a direct response to the message Boris Johnson sent to Rishi Sunak.
And what do you think that proves?
Well, that Dougie Smyth was right at the heart of what was happening the day Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister.
I mean, obviously, Dougie Smyth has kept an incredibly low profile. He never comments on any of this stuff.
No.
And you've been talking about it for months. And he never defends himself. He never gives his version of the story. So we don't honestly know what the truth is.
Well, I think the number of people I've spoken to, I think it would be bizarre if, given the calibre of people I've spoken to, both inside number 10, in Cabinet, across the party, at the top of CCHQ, from top donors down, I think it would be bizarre, given the number of people I've spoken to, if what was in the book wasn't true. And also, there is the legal aspect of this. So not only does my book have to go through a filter in HarperCollins, but because of the nature of the material that's in there, it also has to go out to external media barristers. I can promise you that every word in that book is true.
So then the question is, why are you still wedded to this institution? Because this institution, as you describe it, is corrupt.
I say it's corrupt. Other people say it's corrupt.
Is has base instincts. It's selfish. It has got nothing to do with public service. So why are you a Conservative then, if that's what it is?
Because I believe in conservative principles of freedom and many other points of conservatism that I believe in. But what I'm hoping
Isn't there another vehicle?
What I'm hoping is that Kemi Badenoch will kind of like cut the ship free from Gove and Cummings and Dougie Smith. By the way, the three of them are 30-year-old friends, very close, that she will cut. They're almost indivisible, between as individuals. I'm hoping she will cut the Conservative Party ship free from those individuals, find the strength within herself and the confidence to run the Conservative Party as a leader with confidence and to take it forward. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm pinning my hopes on at the moment, is that Kemi can turn her back on them and understand that she has both the ability.
Even though you say they helped create her.
Oh, so
isn't your whole
they'd
argument
be
that
friends with
they
Kemi.
create people who then
They
keep
use
him in
people.
place, and then they turn on them.
They use malleable people that they can fashion. Now,
So
Kemi,
why would she turn on the people who helped put her in place?
They've known Kemi since long before she was an MP, and she's been a long time. When I first started writing the plot 2.5 years ago, that made it very clear in the plot that actually Kemi was going to be the next leader of the Conservative Party. That was very obvious because she was very obviously, I'd had so much information that she was the next protege. I predicted this 2.5 years ago when people were still saying, who is Kemi Badenoch? I knew 2.5 years ago she was the next. She was the plot. She was the next person after Rishi. They always have one in reserve. So they always have one and one in reserve. And she's been in training a long time.
You have some sort of hope that she will cut the cord.
So, she hates me for saying all this, she doesn't like it. She says, I'm my own person. I'm not controlled by anybody. It's just not true. She has been. But I'm hoping now, because my position now, honouring the members' vote, being a Conservative, is to, from this point of, the book coming out, will be to loyally back Kemi in the same way Labour MPs loyally backed Corbyn.
Really?
Yeah, you won't hear me going, unless she does something absolutely catastrophically wrong or something very odd happens. She has my support from now on in. I want her to succeed. I don't want Reform to be the next government. I want Kemi to succeed.
So you don't want Boris back anymore?
Boris doesn't want to come back. Boris doesn't want to come back. It's interesting. One of the reasons why Nigel Farage is filling the political stage at the moment is because Boris Johnson has left it. But he doesn't want to come back. Why? I think it's...
That's a slightly different question. I mean, as to whether he wants to. But I mean, you were always clear that you wanted him back and that you thought it was a terrible mistake.
I think if Boris Johnson were to come back tomorrow into a winnable seat and he was to be elected leader of the Conservative Party, that it would be guaranteed that this Labour government would be serving one term. And Labour know that too. But I think his time as Prime Minister was possibly one of the most miserable times of his life. And he's earning huge amounts of money. He's doing a great deal of work with Ukraine. He's living his best life with his wife and his young children. I don't think you could. I think wild horses could drag him back.
You see, I mean, we spent election night together here, and then I spent election night with Boris Johnson in America. And my sort of, my take on him was very much sort of, he was looking at Trump and thinking, well, if Trump can come back after everything that he's been accused of, nothing I've been accused of is remotely as bad as that. I can come back too. And his whole analysis of why the Conservative Party has gone wrong is because they got rid of him, And
that's my analysis
and that's your
too.
Analysis. So
that's not just mine and Boris's analysis. That's a lot of people's analysis.
So I mean, I'm not sure I believe that he doesn't want to come back. He may not want to come back now.
No, well, I can't predict what he'll want to do in a year or two from now, but he definitely doesn't want to come back now.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, the point is you come back after a couple of years of Kemi Badenoch.
Who knows? You can't even look a week ahead.
Isn't that really the plan?
You can't look a week ahead, not 2 years ahead,
But that's what you'd like to see, isn't it?
No, I don't know, because I'm not sure. It's quite complex in terms of the makeup of the Conservative MPs. There are a lot of MPs in Westminster right now who worked very hard to remove Boris Johnson. Conservative MPs. Are they ever... Do you know any MP who ever says, I got that completely wrong? You don't. So I just can't see a scenario whereby the Conservative Party, right now as it stands with those 121 MPs, says, I got that so wrong. I want to keep my seat next time. I need Boris Johnson back. I just don't see it happening.
I mean, I know you're doing this sort of like, I will be loyal to Kemi, but I mean, it's not honestly very convincing, you know? And
Look, you've put a hypothetical scenario to me. So let me talk about a hypothetical scenario to try and answer your question. So say 2 years from now, we are, I don't know, Reform are polling way better than we are. Say we're looking at, if an election was held 2 years today, we'd be looking at losing 60 MPs and down to, say, 50 MPs returning, which quite easily could have happened this time. So say we're looking at that. So just put yourself inside the head of MPs and say polls are coming out saying if Boris Johnson was leading the Conservative Party, this is how it'd look. There'd be 350 Conservative MPs. What would you expect MPs to do? Would they say, well, look, you know, we've got to say we got it wrong, let's go and get Boris back? I think they probably will, because they'll want to save their own skins and save the party. I think that will probably happen. But the question is, would he come back? I don't know what the answer to that is.
I mean, I think we probably do
I
know
know
the
you
answer
think he will.
because he spoke about Cincinnatus,
And the plough.
the guy
and
coming
everything
back and all
else,
that, and
yeah.
you mentioned that in your
Hasta
book.
la vista,
And
baby.
yeah, you know, I mean, there are enough reasons out there. The fact that he doesn't go away, the fact that he comes on Channel 4 on election night is enough to tell you
In
this
America,
this man has not left the political stage. And he still wants to matter. And so that's why people kind of
Yeah,
assume.
I'll give you
But
that.
it's, you know,
Politics is in his blood.
it's all guesswork ultimately. I mean, the thing is, the scenario you put is not unlikely, but a lot of Conservative MPs at the moment are feeling quite buoyant because they think
they are,
'cause they
because
think
Labour
Labour's
are doing so badly.
and so they think it's all going to land in their lap.
I've just
I mean,
been- I've been
explain why
saying
you
that.
think they're wrong.
I've been saying that after interview after interview. I think the worst thing that could have happened for the Conservative Party is for Labour to fail as badly as it is. You know, Labour have upset so many voter groups who will never forgive them for what they've done, whether it's farmers or whether it's pensioners or whether it's small businesses. Whether it's doctors, GP surgeries, whatever it is, they will not forget. Okay, they've made a few people happy, like hospital doctors and others, but there's a lot of people. They've hurt too many people too fast and too hard to recover. And I think we can both probably say that's a difficult scenario for them to be in, even longer term. I think it's very likely this is just a one-term government.
What this struck me as is someone who has been in politics and left, and very much left, and kind of now looks at it almost with disgust.
Who? Me?
You.
Oh. So I've got to say, I have to say, when I first started writing the plot, I did not expect in a million years I was going to learn the things that I did. And I thought I didn't want to write downfall.
This is the sexual stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, the sexual stuff. No, in the plot, the stuff I uncovered week after week about how Boris Johnson was brought down, I just didn't even believe myself what I was being told to begin with.
Has all that turned you off politics, is my point? You know,
Hasn't turned
Has it
me
made
off
you
politics.
think, God, this is a ghastly game?
Honestly, I just feel like the Mary Whitehouse of politics at the moment. The stuff I was told for downfall did shock me. It did shock me. And politics needs to clean its act up. Politicians need to clean their act up.
Why are you so shocked by gay sex in Westminster?
Because it's a bloody office. It's a place where would you be shocked if gay? I can't believe people ask me this question. Would you be shocked if you discovered that there was a WhatsApp thread in your company that organised group gay sex sessions in offices?
But hasn't straight sex been going on in offices since time immemorial?
I don't think it was organised in a group sex session on a WhatsApp thread called Right Now.
Well, that's just modern technology. But I mean, what I mean is the sort of there's
no.
You know,
You're trying to diminish
something. People have been bonking in the
Rich.
office for as long as
this isn't just bonking.
we've ever talked about.
This isn't just
sex at work. And what you've revealed is some WhatsApp groups in which gay MPs and some straight MPs get together and have casual sex in Westminster.
In two offices.
And that is shocking. There's no doubt about it. But
I think most of your audience listening to this might think that's a bit out of order.
It is out of
and
order.
Don't try and paint me as being somebody as being against gay sex.
No,
that's
I'm
nonsense.
not. No, what I'm saying is it's
the biggest
why
privilege.
This is more shocking.
It's the biggest privilege in the land to be elected and sent to Westminster. If you look at any stage during the day at BBC Parliament, you will see empty green benches in debates, but you won't see empty bars. And you won't see empty offices, two particular offices where those group gay sex sessions took place.
Do you think Boris Johnson ever had sex in a work environment?
No, I don't.
You don't?
No, actually, no, I don't. I don't. Because I think the one thing that you would not admit, but you know, and I know, is that what he does outside of work, I don't, but you and I both know he's quite shy and he's not a small talker and he's quite socially awkward in this. So no,
Yeah.
I don't see him as being somebody doing that in a workplace, no.
Right. That's interesting. But I mean, so why does that sort of really get you though, in a way that's
I think it's
the other behaviour,
it does.
hasn't pushed you
No,
over the
all
edge?
of it does.
You know,
It does.
this is like the last straw, isn't
No,
it? Sort of
come on, it's one small chapter in a 100,000 words. So I know a lot's been made about it and made of it. But when I'm sent photographs
when I said
when I'm sent
enough, you talked about
photographs
it.
on a 30-second timer from somebody, from a staff member, that shows an MP stood in an office naked with an erection in his hand, with another MP lounging back on the green sofa behind him, with the London Eye going round in the background through the window, it was pretty shocking.
Yeah.
It was pretty shocking.
Even for a former nurse.
Yeah. And I did say, I'm a woman of the world, I'm a former nurse, this isn't going to shock me. It did.
Right, so you're a woman who's got to the top of British politics, looked in and gone, oh my God, it's utterly rotten in there.
Yeah, I have, yeah. And it has to change. And I'll tell you what, if it doesn't change, the Conservative Party has no chance of survival, because I cannot believe in a million years that people who behave in this way, who are more interested in a hedonistic lifestyle, in drinking cheap booze in bars, in having group gay sex sessions in offices, I can't believe that group of people have the ability within them to perform in a way which enables the Conservative Party to survive the onslaught which Reform is going to present to them and the Liberal Democrats. They just don't have it.
And do you think that behaviour basically sort of defines who they are, which is what you sort of described? Yeah. Or is it just a little, something in their spare time,
No, so 2.5 years researching these books, it's I know more than I want to know. And it's a group of MPs. We saw the deterioration, and it's interesting because somebody actually said this somewhere this morning. You saw the deterioration in MPs' behaviour in 2016 over Brexit. You saw the erosion of what was normally, respect, collegiate kind of like atmosphere MPs had, in working together, even across the chamber.
Years before that, in people's minds, we also had MPs' expenses, which
that was
down in public
tame in
estimation.
Comparison. There was, and money's always been,
So when you look back at your time in politics, do you ever think I could have been better? Or that I did,
all the time, yeah.
Or that I did things that I now regret?
Oh, God, yeah. I've just had a chat with a new MP this morning, actually, who was saying something to me. And I just put my hand on his arm and said, you could be somebody one day. You could be a cabinet minister one day. You could even be a prime minister one day. The conversation you just had with me, don't have it with anybody else ever again. Don't talk like that ever again, because it will prevent you from becoming the person you have the potential to be. And the problem is that young MPs come into Westminster and they don't know how it works. They don't know how to behave when they get there. And I look back on things that I've done and think, oh, I wish I hadn't done that. I just wish I hadn't. But I've enjoyed my time.
Did you get too caught up in the tribalism?
No. So isn't it interesting? Because journalists one said to me yesterday, your loyalty took you to the point of being ridiculous. And another journalist said to me last night, you're not loyal at all to your party, are you? Do you regret being disloyal or something? I can't win, on either. It depends who's looking at what I do. I just can't win.
But those two things can be true though, can't they? Because
they can both be true at the same time, yeah.
Because, what people mean is...
I did call David Cameron and George Osborne a pair of posh boys.
You would defend Boris Johnson for pretty much anything. And that's what people think.
No, I've said, if he kicked a dog, I wouldn't defend him, no.
But what he did do was bad enough, and you defended him all the way on.
No, it wasn't. So let's not go down there.
No, I know.
We will argue the rest of the podcast.
You will always argue. You will always defend him on that, and that's why I think people kind of wonder, or I wonder, do you ever think, why is it that when you're looking at all these other politicians, you are quick to condemn them because of certain behaviour, But with him, you would, it seems, forgive any sort of
No, it's not true.
infringement.
That's not true. So, I have two issues really. One is, there are two aspects to my personality which I think play into that. One is that I'm ADHD, absolutely, to the end of the letter. I have a daughter who's trained in psychotherapy who's told me this. Yeah. And apparently she informs me that we have an instant and almost it hampers us ability to perceive other people's personalities and our loyalty to other people. The other is that I'm a northerner, and those two things combined can be a disadvantage when you're assessing other people. And, I knew from the day I met...
Why is it I'm a northerner? What's being a northerner got anything to do with assessing
Well, maybe
other
it's
people?
just being a Scouser then. But I
was born in Liverpool, actually. But,
oh, were you?
Yeah.
Where?
So what's that got to do with assessing people?
Oh, I just think it does. I just think it's a northern trait.
What, that you're good at it or bad at it?
I think we're good at it. Yeah, I think Northerners are good at sussing people out quite quickly. Maybe it's because we have to survive on our feet, and and if you've been brought up in the streets that I was brought up in, you need to be pretty canny.
But that doesn't explain to me why you were absolutely.
Chris, I don't know where you're going with this questioning. You seem to be fixated on Boris Johnson's
best friend.
Yeah, no, I'm not his best friend. I'm sure he's got a lot of best friends.
Well, you would be the one who would go out and defend him when nobody else would. And yet, when you look at, it seems, everybody else in politics in the Conservative Party, you have assessed them here and gone, they're all ghastly. They're all terrible.
No, not all. There are some very good. No, well, there are some very good people. You do seem to be quite fixated on my relationship with Boris Johnson. I have other political friends.
Because he's the one who you want to see back. He's the one you think is great.
I know he's the one everybody's obsessed with. But, there are a lot of people in the Conservative Party who are very good people. There are still good people in the Conservative Party, but they're diminishing in number.
Can I change the subject to what you've also been talking about this week, which is the Church of England? Now, obviously, this is a story that largely came out of Channel 4 News reporting in 2017, which has now led to the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury. And you wrote a furious article in the Mail talking about your own experience with the church and talking about childhood abuse. What's it been like revealing that, given it's been something you have kept secret for so long?
So I wrote a trilogy of books, and by the time, it was a cathartic process for me. And by the time I got to the third book, I think I just felt confident enough to write his name. And a journalist who was reviewing the book read it and undertook some research and contact. And I'd been asked the question, is this you, this person? Her words were that the scenes of child abuse are so graphic, I don't believe that you cannot have experienced them. And she researched and said, this name that you've mentioned is actually somebody who's a Church of England vicar in a church where you lived, and kind of like, in a way, outed me. She's very smart. And she did some research and discovered that he died. And that was a bit of a story at the time. I did go to see as a result of that, 3 bishops from the Church of England in the House of Lords. And they treated me like I was some kind of contagion. They sat in a room with me 12 feet away from them. I was sat down the bottom, they sat near the door. And I couldn't actually explain in detail what had happened. And they went away and they promised me they would look into it and they would report back to me. And they didn't. And I just let it go, really. I just didn't... it's not something I like talking about because it just it makes me feel crap, frankly. It just makes me feel horrible. And I don't like talking about it. But what I did was just let it go. And I think that was probably something that was a mistake. I should have been a bit braver. I should have been a bit stronger, because there are people who are struggling. And I had a profile, and I probably should have been, if there was anything I should have campaigned on as an MP, it should have been that. But I would have received a lot of opposition. It would have been very difficult. And it was only when I read about the abuse and this John Smyth and it was actually just reading what those young boys had suffered that just the red mist came down. And I wrote my column on it last week, which wasn't a smart thing to do in the week that my book was coming out, frankly. because the week should all be about downfall. And I wrote it, and I think I'd been kind of like seething for about a week over it. And one of the things that really upset me was the fact that the person who abused me went to Leeds, bragged about knowing Jimmy Savile. Then everybody in my council estate was told, oh, he's emigrated to America. He hadn't. He'd been taken into the church for some kind of retraining. And then he was farmed out to a rural Norfolk parish where he had a dozen elderly constituents, once a month popping in. And that was exactly what they did with John Smyth. They did exactly the same thing. I'd contacted the palace when it came out in the story, and they sent these 3 bishops to see me. And that's what they do.
And are those serving bishops now?
Yeah, Welby doesn't speak to anybody. They don't have a formal process. They don't have a way of dealing with these. They kind of like farm it out sideways and shut it down. And that's what they did with me.
And if they are serving bishops, do you think they should all resign?
I do. And so what I'm doing is my own little verification check. We're going back to our 2015 emails. We're getting hold of them through, because I'm not an MP anymore, so we have to go through and get hold of those emails from 2015. And because I want to make sure, double check I've got the names right, because it would be very wrong of me to say the 3 names and they be wrong. So I want to double check that I've got the names right. If any of those names are thinking of standing to replace Justin Welby, then, once I know who they were, I will out them. And can I just say, Bishop Helen of Newcastle is doing an amazing job. It's taken a woman to be brave enough and to challenge the institution of the Church of England and the historical child sexual abuse and physical abuse, because I'm quite sure that abuse meted out on those boys had a homoerotic nature to it, and in terms of how it was carried out and the reasons why he behaved in that way and beat those boys so viciously. She's the first person to challenge what has happened and the systems and processes that the church use. And thank goodness she's doing that. And she's called for those bishops named in the Macon report to resign. And I think they should do. And
do you know, you presumably weren't a sort of a one-off in your parish.
That's why it was really...
So there must be loads and loads and loads of cases, not just from your...
I only saw one girl. So I only saw one in the front seat of his car. I only saw one.
But what I mean is, that's just that's one vicar from one period of time.
Yeah.
The scale of this kind of abuse in the Church of England must be enormous, mustn't it?
I think so. And see, the Catholic Church went through its own. Interestingly, I would feel more comfortable in a Catholic Church today than I would in a Church of England church. But the Catholic Church has been through its own. Half my family are Irish. They're from Mayo on the west coast of Ireland. And they've been through this process of the shame and the upset of what was going on within that. It was massive within the Catholic Church. They've been through that process. And I think it's just beginning for the Church of England. The Anglican hierarchy has fought this, it's resisted it. I think it's done it for financial reasons. I think it's, protected its own coffers, and that's because it didn't want to have to pay out compensation to victims. I think that's why it's done it.
Do you think it should still be the established church? Should there still be this link of church and state?
Oh, I don't know. That's quite a complex and constitutional question. And I don't know the answer to that. And there needs to be a kind of root and branch reform. They need to find compassion. They need to find a way of installing processes within. And, there is a kind of, it's institutional. It's like abuse happens in institutions. We know abuse happens in Westminster, both with young men and young women. We've heard enough and know enough about the complaints process that needs to be set up to know that abuse happens in institutions. And it's whether it's the Church of England or whether it's the Westminster, because it just doesn't happen in the Conservative Party. We know that. Whether it's in Westminster, whether it's in the Catholic Church, where there are institutions, in the BBC, where there are institutions, there seems to be cultures that develop and they grow up and they don't get challenged effectively when it comes to light. And this is part of the problem. It was quite apparent in the BBC.
Well, that's why, isn't it about power? And that's why I'm sort of saying that maybe we need to sort of challenge the power structures. Bishops You know,
The
should bishops
hierarchy, where
get
you've
the
got a
power to sit in the House of
hierarchy,
Lords?
where you have a hierarchy and deference, when you have celebrities and gods and, you know, BBC hierarchy, and when you have it in the Church of England, the deference, congregations and you know, priests, where you have those situations, you have abuse.
Well, that's why I'm saying, do you think the power needs to be taken away? You know, should bishops be kicked out of the Lords?
Yeah, I think they should. You know, I haven't been asked that question. I haven't thought that through, but I think instinctively, yeah, possibly. Yeah.
Are you confident that any of these institutions are going to be tackled?
Well, the Catholic Church tackled its own issues, and they're particularly in terms of their safeguarding. So they've tackled it. Can the Church of England? We'll wait and see. I don't know. I can't say. I don't know enough about the structures within the Church of England hierarchy to be able to say that. But I know there's one brave woman, Bishop Helen, who's out there. And at the moment, thank God she is. And I feel as though I look at her and think, how weak was I? Because really, instead of just letting it go, I've said I'm going to consult a solicitor. I think maybe I need to challenge the church and take my case to the church and see how far I can get with it so that other people can see what happens. Because I am probably one of the only high-profile figures who's spoken out about abuse in the Church of England, but I was too weak. I was too cowardly. I just let it go. And from 2015, I shouldn't have done. And I do feel a responsibility that maybe I let a lot of people down by doing that I could have been a voice and an advocate for change, and I wasn't.
And how confident are you about the Conservative Party being able to rescue itself?
Well, that's on the shoulders of the new MPs who've come in now. And it's their responsibility to take it to a better place, to a more moral place, to a place of work, to a place where they are interested in politics and policy and the lives of ordinary people, and not in, you know, the price of a pint in a Westminster bar and who they can have sex with. It's now the responsibility, and which leader, absolutely, which leader they can remove next, or which power struggle they can get involved into next. For too many, it's all about the game. You know, one minister said to me, she said this about Michael Gove. She said, it's just all a game. And I wonder with Michael Gove what the end game is. And somebody else said to me in a different conversation, the thing is, there is no end game. It is just the game. And that's what has to change.
Nadine Dorries, thank you very much indeed for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's it for this edition of the Political Forecast. And next time, bye-bye.